Ride till the sun comes up and down around me about 2 or 3 times. Smoking cigarettes in the last seat. Try to hide my sorrow from the people I meet and get along with it all. Go down where people say, oh, sing a song with a friend. Change the shape of a man and get back in the game. Start playing again. I'd like to stay, but I might have to go to start over again. Might go back down to Texas, I might go to somewhere I've never been. Get up in the morning and go out at night, and I won't have to go home. Get used to being alone and change the words of the song and start singing again. I'm tired of running around looking for answers to questions I already know.
To make sure everybody gets.
I could build me a castle of memories just to have somewhere to go. Count the days and the nights that it takes to get back in the saddle again.
We're just waiting for people to show up. We'll start in just a few minutes, folks. We had about 46 people sign up. So everybody looks like they're piling in like normal.
I'm going down to the Greyhound station, gonna get a ticket to ride. Find a big fat lady with 2 or 3 kids and sit down by her side. Ride till the sun comes up and down around me about 2 or 3 times. Smoking cigarettes in the last seat. Try to hide my sorrow from the people I meet and get along with it all. Go down where people say, oh, feed the pigeons some clay. Turn the night into day and start talking again when I know what to say. Almost felt you touching me just now.
Hey folks, my name is Brianna Lane and I am on the farm board, and welcome to our Tuesday Tech Talks. We've been doing this for a while now. It's kind of hard to believe, and this topic came up a lot, how to run a hybrid venue, and we are pleased to have some really great guests. What we'll do today is we will hear from our guests. They'll introduce themselves, and then there'll be time for question and answer at the end. You can drop your questions in the chat if you want, but those will go just to the hosts, and or else you can speak your questions at the end. We'll try to get to everyone, but we only have an hour, so we are hosting these monthly, and then we're also hosting gatherings of all sorts. I know a lot of you know a lot about them already and have been joining us for some community stuff. If you have any questions or want to join us for more farm goodness, please check out the Farm Folk website. Thanks to Annie Caps for all of her leadership and for running tech today. And I am going to stop talking and hand it right over to our panelists. We have Sarah, Craig, and Reese from Cafe Lena. And Randy Styka as well is here. I'm just going to have them introduce themselves and jump right in. Sarah, do you want to start us off?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I am the executive director of Cafe Lena, which is a 110-seat folk venue in Saratoga Springs, New York, a couple hours north of New York City. And it's a historic venue that's been around since 1960. I've been here for, I think, 27 years, although I'm not sure how to count the last couple of years. We are a venue that's seen tremendous growth in about the last 3 or 4 years since doing a big renovation. We run a school of music, we do a lot of community outreach, and we have concerts happening pretty much every night of the week.
I'm also at Cafe Lena. I'm our primary house manager, and I've also taken over the role of video tech, and I've been managing our navigation through several different live streaming platforms.
I'm Randy Styka, and I wear a couple of different hats. Our venue is Acoustic Renaissance Concerts. Unlike Cafe Lena, we do roughly 8 shows a year. It's in a rented space in a Unitarian church. The series has been going on for 27 years, but we're not doing daily shows or even necessarily monthly shows. We take summertime off. I'm also involved with the Old Town School of Folk Music in Chicago, and a lot of concerts there. They are not doing any live streaming, so it's I've got perspectives from both of those. So.
Great. So when we were sort of hacking out a plan for how we were going to approach this conversation, we figured that we would take the floor for the first half hour, and then it would be a back and forth with everybody who's streaming right now for the second half hour. And so we're going to touch on 5 different questions, and if these don't at all address what you came for, then make sure that you let Brianna know so that they can let us know what your questions are, and that'll help the conversation at the end. We just want this to be as useful for you as possible. So our 5 questions are basically, what role does streaming play in our venues these days? What hurdles did we have to climb over to get our streaming up and running? What's our current tech setup? Are happy with it? How should a small presenter go about getting started in streaming? And what are our greatest hopes and fears for the folk community when it comes to streaming? So we're gonna whip through those high-level questions in about a half hour. And Randy, I'm gonna ask you, what role does streaming play in your concert series these days?
Well, we didn't plan on streaming. COVID hit. And actually the way we got started was because we've been working with WFMT's Folk Stage. They got shut out of their studio because of COVID almost 2 years ago now. And Rich Warren approached us. We had the facility that was available. So we started doing live streams for the Folk Stage audience. So it's broadcast on the radio, and the stream was only for people who were members of Folk Stage. And so we started doing that without an audience. And then back, I believe this May, we started doing it with a limited audience. When we resumed our in-person concerts back in September, we said, the only way to effectively have shows and have an audience being comfortable and taking into account COVID is to live stream. And so we've been doing all of our shows with the option of a live stream, same ticket price as in person. And it's going quite well. And in some cases, like our most recent show was Sons of the Never Wrong back in January, and COVID rates were really high at that point in the Chicago area. And there was a massive ice storm the day of the show. So it was ridiculously slippery. So we had a sold out show. Our capacity is 160. But we tell people you can switch. If you buy it in person, you can switch. And so we had a lot of people switch, and we ended up having about 50 people in the audience, and everyone else was watching from home. But given COVID and given the weather, it was great. So it's been a big part of what we're doing and what we hope to keep doing. So.
Great. So I'll just talk for a moment about what role streaming plays at Cafe Lena these days. So we started streaming back in 2012 through Concert Window, and we had a single camera at the back of the room, and we were sending the broadcast sound right out of our back of house soundboard there. And so after we did a big renovation in 2017, we reopened with like new and improved facility. We had installed, well, shortly after that, we installed 3 cameras that are remote operated from a back room, and the broadcast sound is mixed separately for the stream. So it was a huge upgrade, and we didn't really have a business plan around it. What we had was a state grant to spend, and we put about $80,000 into that system. And we figured, maybe we'd do some album recording, maybe we'd make some videos for our performers. We had a whole bunch of different little ideas, and we figured we'd just keep streaming. And when the pandemic hit, we had the trained staff and, the whole system to start streaming immediately from our stage. And over the course of the shutdown period, after getting ourselves declared an essential business, so that we could keep bringing in bands to perform on stage with nobody in the house, we were able to channel somewhat north of $100,000 in tips into the pockets of regional musicians. A similar amount came to Cafe Lena, and we didn't have to lay off any staff. We didn't have to, sell off our record collection or our house guitar or anything like that. We survived and we got through, and really helped to keep some people afloat through using that system. And so then, as business began to turn to normal in April of 21, we saw the largesse that we had experienced through the tip jar start to decline, and the viewership decline. And we made some decisions about basically moving behind a paywall with our streaming, and really putting a lot of effort into creating an attractive subscription product that can generate real revenue for the venue and for our musicians. So right now we've gone from this real high of where the entire venue was being sustained by live streaming, to it becoming kind of negligible again, like it was for most of the time when we were on Concert Window, to now really devoting organizational resources, know-how, and people power into building a platform that we hope will become a significant part of our business and make us much more pandemic proof for years to come. So what were the big hurdles that you had to get over to get up and streaming? And maybe I'll just throw this one to Reese first. What were some of our challenges?
Well, I would say you were saying trained staff, which might be a little bit of a stretch. It's a lot of self-training and just trial and error and figuring stuff out as we go along. But we've gotten to a comfort level. I think, like you were saying, we were already well into just streaming as a daily routine by the time we hit pandemic times. A lot of it for us was strategizing, how we can best value these streams. And so it might be most helpful to kind of fast forward to the current platform that we're using and why. A big part of the original plan for installing the higher quality camera system for Cafe Lena was for the purpose of archiving, not necessarily live streaming. And the current platform that we're on, a big part of the reason we chose this platform was to be able to monetize those archives. And so it's not only about live streaming, it's making use of the recorded product as well. But I would say the biggest challenge throughout this has been trying to figure out how to make sure that people will show up. And, you know, how are we giving them a product that is competitive with everything else that's out there now that we're competing with the entire internet? And especially now that we're putting things behind a paywall, how can we convince people to pay up front? We'd had a brief experiment during the middle of the pandemic where we tried to use our Eventbrite ticketing system and just make a private link for things. And people just weren't willing to pay upfront for the streams. So we went back to YouTube, and it took a complete commitment to putting ticket prices on all the streams to start building towards something that could be valuable. So there's been a lot of conversation that's gone into trying to, you know, make a product that is viable. And it's something we're still figuring out, you know, trying to put additional content in. Intermissions is a whole problem now. How do you keep people on the stream, but also give the kitchen staff a chance to get out and get more orders? And through the pandemic, there were also issues with hardware and internet and there's, a whole bunch of issues. It might be easier to pinpoint what's useful to talk about with
Sure.
some questions, but
I agree, because
you know.
there were certainly plenty of hair on fire moments, but why talk about that until we know people want to know the story? So Randy, why don't you just talk about what some of the hurdles were?
Yeah, well, that sounds so familiar. When we first started doing the streams, we learned the lesson very much the hard way back when we were doing it with WFMT, that we knew from the start, everyone had said, wired internet, don't go wireless. So we've been wired from the start. What we didn't realize at the venue, as I mentioned, it's in a rented space in a Unitarian church, and they had a relatively fast connection. We didn't find out until we were doing it a while just how unstable that connection was. The church is in a different building than where the internet is, and the cable was an old cable hung over an alley 15 years ago. So we had a whole learning curve there where the church, in conjunction with us, because they did start live streaming their services around the same time, but we upgraded the internet itself and put in a fiber optic connection between the two buildings. Because they're doing it over Comcast, a cable provider, the key thing, particularly in our case, we were both live streaming and always sending to the radio station, WFMT. And they have a pretty high bandwidth, even though it's audio only. But we, on cable, it's typically 10% of whatever your download speed is what your upload speed is. And so with the upgrade, we now have a 30 megabits upstream speed. Once we had done all of that, it started to work a lot better. And just not to scare people away about the cost of doing this, because Cafe Lena, you spend some real money on those cameras and the setup. We started with one simple camera, which was a little older video camera that I had from home with an HDMI to USB converter. Over time, in conjunction with the church, we've upgraded to a 3-camera system, one expensive camera, which is the most expensive thing we have, and then 2 pretty old video cameras on tripods. But we have the ability to do 3 separate cameras and different camera angles. And with that, and with the hardware we've put in, we spent at most $8,000 on the whole setup. And that's not counting it's my own personal camera, that type of thing. So you can do it a little, you know, how much money you need to spend varies a lot. So.
Yeah, I will just say that when we installed that $80,000 system, that was an upgrade from having an iPad attached to a toilet paper holder that sat on top of the piano.
You went all the way to the Cadillac there.
So, Reese, why don't you talk about what our system is right now?
Just sort of the tech
equipment
side of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we broadcast, we use broadcast picks. We have they installed kind of a one-stop shop system for us. So it includes a hardware encoder. It includes their broadcast software. So we have a switcher in the back, which it controls the 3 cameras. And it also gives us the ability to broadcast pre-recorded clips, still images, put graphics on the screen, stuff like that. That's a lot of the things that we've been working with over the last couple of months to make the streams better. And then right now we use Restream, which is a multi-streaming platform online. There is a free option, but it's about $30 to $35 a month. It lets you stream across all of your social media channels. And it also lets you enter just regular RTMP information so that you can split the stream to your paid site as well. So what we've been doing is sending out the first 2 songs of each show for free, and then cutting that and telling people if you want to see the rest of the show, you can come buy a ticket on Cafe Lena TV, which is what our new platform is called. And then, like Sarah mentioned earlier, we have the separate audio mix. The one thing that was occurring to me as Randy was talking about the internet problems they ran into, the 2 things that I think are the most important for setting up any sort of live stream, whether you're doing it from home or a venue, is internet stability and audio quality. Because without those 2 things, you're not going to have a viable stream. And the multi-camera thing is nice, but even a single camera will do it if the audio is good and it's a reliable connection. So I think that touches on our tech.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the audio. That was one of the things I had in my notes. One of the things that we did from day one, when we started having an audience, and it's absolutely essential, is having 2 separate mixes. We have an audience mix and a stream mix, and there are some issues that go with it. For instance, in the venue, we've got a grand piano, and in 2 weeks we've got John McCutcheon coming to play for us. He plays the piano. We've never mic'd the piano in the past because it's a big piano in a venue that it makes it all the way to the back really well, sometimes a little too well. But that's not going to go through on a stream. So right away we bought stereo mics that we can put on the piano anytime we have a show now. And similarly, we have stereo crowd mics that we have, and the stream mix has that in there so that it actually sounds natural when people are clapping or laughing or singing along, but you don't put it in the house mix. And so that's an additional bit of tech and cost. The cost wasn't that much, but in terms of logistics for us, we pay a sound person for our shows, but we're just having Maurice mix the house sound, and I'm doing in the back. I'm the MC and wash the dishes and do everything else, and run the stream sound plus run the 3-camera video setup from the back. But we have, for bigger shows, we get somebody else to help with that because logistics get to be a little bit crazy. But the audio is a huge part of it. You're absolutely right. Just 1 camera you can get by. We did for 6 months just fine with 1 camera, but if you don't have good audio, no one's going to want to watch. So,
yep.
In terms of tech for the viewing, we have a great little device, Atom Mini Pro switcher, And for the price, that I've been really happy with that box that handles the 3 cameras. And the stream goes directly to a private YouTube link. And once we switched from, we were using StreamYard for a while, it was one of the platforms like Restream and a number of these. We switched, instead of going through a laptop and everything else, we switched to, excuse me, going directly from the Atom Mini Pro directly to YouTube. The reliability is just perfect, and the laptop needs are minimal because it's not doing a whole lot of work anymore. So I recommend that box pretty highly. And if we have time, I do have pictures of some of these things. So
what would be the next thing that you want if you were going to sort of take it up a notch from where you are right now?
At this point, I can't think of anything. We've done everything we really wanted. I wouldn't mind a higher resolution camera because we have the one PTZ optics, which is a brand I can highly recommend for the remote control camera. It's very high resolution, and my 2 little tripod cameras are older, and you can tell when we switch cameras, if you're looking at a big screen, wow, that's a really great picture, and that one's a little grainier. That would be the one thing if we had, the money to do it. But other than that, the setup of audio and video is working just great, and the YouTube and private link thing has been working really well for us. So, well, what about you? Anything you're thinking of?
Yeah, it's our conversation is around cameras also. A 4th camera, we would like a 4th camera that would be kind of up on stage and be able to catch hands on keyboards and the back of the drum kit and things like that. And we feel like our cameras are not ideal in low light situations, and we want an image that's a little crisper and brighter. Anything else, Reese?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're constantly trying to move toward is trying to make the streams replicate the experience of being in the room as much as possible. And if you compare, our cameras are good, but if you compare a nicely lit photograph of a concert happening with the stream, it's much, much different. The one thing that I think, we're missing right now to take streams to the next level is just time. It's, staff availability. And a lot of what we're talking about now is introducing intermission content, interviews with the artists that would be recorded earlier in that day. And all of that just takes availability of the staff. And time to get those interviews recorded and exported in the right format and put onto the broadcast system. So, that's from the point of view of the person that has to do all of that stuff. It's just, I need more time. But yeah, I mean, it's always just trying to make the experience more true to life. And in the areas of downtime, how do you keep viewers engaged? So more availability to do that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good question, because our intermission is back before we had an audience, it was a screen just with a logo, and since then we just leave the cameras on, a camera on, so people know that we're still there. We're walking around. But for people at home, that's their 20 minutes to get a cup of coffee or something. But throwing some content in there is a great idea. Yeah, I'm not thought of that.
So we've talked about the simple system and the kind of Cadillac system, and there are a lot of people on the call who I imagine might be hoping that they can start streaming for somewhere between $500 and $5,000. And I would love to just hear you two suggest how that might work. Like, how could you get started?
I'm going to chime in really quick before that question gets asked. We're almost at the halfway point of this discussion, and there are questions rolling in. And I thought a clarification should be made really quick before going too much further is that hybrid venue, when we're thinking of it, is defined as the musicians are live in the room and you're also broadcasting out. So there are a few questions that might come in a little bit of could you meld the two, which is, broadcasting something maybe inside the venue or to your live stream that isn't happening on stage. And you touched upon that already with content like intermission content, which is great. Or melding the two as a hybrid in a different way. But I want to say for the purposes of our discussion, it is definitely the musicians are in your venue at your series, you have booked them and you're broadcasting outward as an additional revenue stream and as additional accessibility to other folks. I love where this conversation, how many points you've touched on already. I just wanted to make sure that we know we're around in the halfway point and that was clear. Let's get back to that question you just asked, Sarah. I'll get out of the way and then I'll come right back soon to field some more of these questions. Also, you can use the raised hand feature. Folks that are listening, you can use in Zoom, you can use the raised hand feature to ask questions as well. All right.
Yeah, that's a great clarification, Brianna. A lot of venues talked about that they were live streaming during the pandemic, and what they meant was that they were promoting a stream that an artist was doing from their own studio. And what we're talking about is just sharing a concert online that has an in-person audience at the venue. Okay, so let's just go back to what should a small presenter do to go about getting started on streaming. And so I'm always the one who comes in with the great tech ideas in these conversations at Cafe Lena. And so we were talking about getting new cameras, and there's been some internal debate about what kind of camera to get. And I said, why can't we just take iPhones and tape them onto our PTZ cameras so that we can actually move them around and stream their feed into the system? And one of my board members, who is the CFO of a major folk festival, said actually they do all their streaming with iPhones. So I think that it's not complete. I'm not saying that we're going to do it, but it's not crazy. So let's talk about like how you might start to put your toe in the water to get started with streaming. Randy, you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, you definitely don't need to spend a ton of money. I know a number of venues have done the same thing with iPhone or an iPad, paper clipped somewhere. The biggest thing that I would just strongly suggest, based on our experiences and other people I've talked to, the only issue I could see with that is an iPhone or an anything is going to be over wireless. And you have to be really careful if you're using a wireless network, particularly if your venue has an audience and if they have access to that for their phones and start gobbling up bandwidth, which is, why we say just go hardwired no matter what. But other than that, in terms of tech, I mentioned the switcher that we're using. The switcher was, when we got it, was about $600, and it does almost everything for doing the stream. So, the expenditure up front, if you have a camera, you can plug the camera right into it, and you can get started very easily. And we went further and added the remote control camera and all that, but you really don't need all of that if you just had a switcher like this. You don't need the switcher, you can do it directly with your computer. We did that for a while and found that, I'm on a 8-year-old Mac right now, and it works just great. But I'm not sure that I want to be putting a lot of video sources into an older computer. So, I guess I answered that. Yeah. So what about
Reese, just imagine that, Cafe Lena is going to present a show in somebody's barn, and we want to live stream it. What do you do?
Yeah. Well, you have to have the cables to make it happen. if you've got a barn in the middle of a field, chances are you would have to rely on some sort of wireless connection to make it happen. I agree with Randy. I think the Mini is a great way to set a foundation for yourself, even if you just have one camera to start with. It leaves you room to grow, and it's a pretty reliable hardware piece. There's free streaming software that you can use through a laptop. OBS is usually the one people start with. There's a slightly more reliable one with additional features that you get included with a Vimeo Pro account, which and Vimeo for us has been it's taken a little bit more of a backseat now with the new platform that we're on, but it does offer ways to monetize video. It offers private live streaming, and it's a very reliable platform. So included with the Pro is that software. So if that's something, they come together. So that's something you could look into. And then, just making sure that you have reliable connections everywhere is, I think, the most important part, both internet and camera into switcher into laptop, wherever your connections are, making sure those are reliable. And, once you get the single camera setup going, then branch out from there. But yeah, the ATEM Mini is a great little piece. We actually also have one of those. For us, it was more so that we could so we could send an HDMI out from our broadcast system into a Zoom call, because Zoom doesn't generally accept RTMP signals. It just needs sources. So we wanted to live stream Zoom calls, and we got that as a way to take an HDMI out for all of our cameras. It would just be the source window, whatever camera was selected would go out. But it's also, very useful for doing at-home streams, and pretty user-friendly too. I would say it's not, it doesn't require all that much knowledge to use. It's pretty simple to get the hang of it.
So we're getting into a lot of tech questions, and I want to remind folks who are listening that we have done so many tech talks. So if you've heard words like OBS or StreamYard or STMP, any of those words that you're not sure what exactly they mean, we probably have a topic covered, a panel on our farm website, and there are so many great folks that will be willing to talk to you just one-on-one if you're trying to set something up, to explain that. Some of these questions that I'm getting are very tech-centric, and they are talking about Joel Simpson said many Android devices or Samsung phones or tablets have the option to use a wired output, which is cool. So not really a question, but a tech topic. And then some are, talking about the restreaming services. Some are talking about different types of cameras and are you able to do 4K, all that. So that's one side of the questions that I'm going to kind of dig into a little bit. Another grouping of questions that I'm getting is about return on investment. And are you marketing to people outside of your town or outside of your normal group of folks that regularly come to you but aren't leaving their home very much anymore? And how worth it is it? And really monetarily speaking, and also growing your community. What are you seeing?
I could speak to that a little bit. So first of all, return on investment, the initial investment in all of our equipment and paying staff to run it and take the time to learn it that we got a great return on, and it was all very worth it. This new endeavor is to move our streams off of the voluntary tip jar model and put it behind a paywall, so that people are typically paying $5 to watch the show, and they're welcome to make an additional tip on top of that. So $5 to watch an individual show, or $15 to subscribe to our platform. We are very much wanting to get a national audience to discover what we have to offer and to become subscribers. That's our long game right now. And we have a whole strategic plan that we're working through to take us from where we are right now, which is about 125 or so monthly subscribers, with another like 300 individual tickets sold, somewhere in that range per month, up to like 750 monthly subscribers, and more like, I think, 500 individual tickets sold a month. So that's when we'll start, paying the bills for this. But right now, this is very dependent on donations from outside supporters who are helping us change our business model to make our historic organization more pandemic proof. Our membership includes people from all over the country now. Our annual donors who are members of our organization. Our YouTube following, before we moved to the paid platform, when we're just on YouTube, grew from about 1,000 pre-pandemic to about 5,000 by the end of the shutdown. And our donations for our annual fund drive have come in from all over the country. So we have an audience that goes well beyond the boundaries of the folks who might be present in the seats any given weekend. And to pay for it, that's absolutely necessary.
And I'll address the same question, and I think what I could say is completely different, because we get people. One of the advantages of streaming definitely is we get plenty of people that used to live in the area, used to come to our shows, that are so glad they can still watch the shows, and as well as people that are ill, or the weather's bad, or whatever. We continue to look at, and we being me and my wife, is basically a two-person operation. There's no paid staff at all. It's all volunteers. We pay sound people, that's it. But we view the live as the focus of the organization. Like I said, we do 8 shows a year. And having the streaming option is essential. We hope to continue to do that. And it's great that we can continue to be in touch with past people that have been coming to our shows. Our model, we've always had season ticket holders, people that buy a season ticket and they come to those 8 shows at a discounted price. And we, every season, get a healthy amount of season subscribers. Most seasons well over 50 people, so a third of our capacity is prepaid in an in-person basis, and then adding the live stream, we've had many people continue to do that on a live stream basis. So I don't feel like we want to do anything where we don't archive them. It's just for the convenience of people being able to watch the show. One of the concerns that this brings up in my mind, I'll be curious how this is something that my friends at Old Town School and we talk about this kind of stuff a lot, is any resistance on the part of performers, or particularly agents, to having your show live stream. I'll be completely honest, we switched from completely in person pre-pandemic to these radio broadcasts, folk stage broadcasts for 19 months, 20 months, whatever, to having shows with an audience. And we didn't ask. We amended our contract to say, so because of COVID, we're going to be live streaming, and sent that to all of the agents and the artists. Did not give them the option of saying, we don't want that. And many of them had provisions in their contract that said, you shall not broadcast and we X'd it off and initialed it, and we got no resistance at all. I know with some big name plant performers that a place like Old Town School would book, that does not happen. Have you run into any of those issues with performers?
Yes, for sure. There are two concerns generally. One is that before we started ticketing for the live stream, some of the performers would have something on like mandolin coming up, and they wanted to sort of save their streaming capacity, promotional capacity for the mandolin show, because they would make more money on that, more guaranteed money on it. Now that we're ticketing things, that some of that resistance has gone away. And then the other concern has been there's sometimes confusion over who owns the video, the archived video. And generally what that concern is about is that the artist would not want us to take the video and use any portion of it for something that they might not like. And that's also our concern. We don't want them to take the video and use it to advertise something that we don't like. So the actual video is ours. And that is a conversation that has created a little bit of tension. And use of it, they have to approve. Otherwise, it's just sitting on a hard drive somewhere. But as long as we establish that nothing will be done with this video, we'll never see the light of day without their approval, it usually is not a problem.
Randy, you read my mind or somebody's. No, I think that question came directly to me. So that was exactly the next question I was going to ask, was the artists. Is there any resistance from artists? It kind of throws the radius clause right out the window. It's kind of a weird thing, but I think that a paywall or a ticketed viewing does.
So I actually include that in the radius clause on my offers now. So, you know, the terrestrial radius clause would be, say, 60 days, 60 miles. But I say, please also let us know if you have any other live streams planned within 2 weeks on either side of this date. I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm saying let us know so that we can market it appropriately.
Right. Yeah, and what we do is similar, and we do we book so far out, and we do our normal 30 days before or after the show in a 60-mile radius, and but let us know about live streams. And we're really, when people say, well, I'm going to be, okay, usually we're pretty easygoing about that. Yeah. So at least we know about it in advance.
If I can jump in on that one, at the risk of opening a much larger tangent, a lot of what we've talked about has been an ongoing conversation about just valuing these live performances online. And that's a big reason why we moved toward putting ticket prices up front. And I think over, the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to continue to develop on an industry scale and hopefully become more of the norm to have those tickets up front. And I would expect there to be some, if you look at, national, sports broadcasts on NBC, there's regional blackouts, and there are right now mechanisms that you can use when you're streaming, which geo block, based on where your viewers are, you can block certain areas. And depending on the platform, some are you can block a whole country, some are down to the zip code. But that's probably going to become a reality for these virtual presentations as it's more widely adopted and it becomes more expected that there's a ticket up front.
Yeah, 100%. I want to clarify something. The videos that you're archiving, is that for your own archives, or is that for future viewing for, can people buy a viewing?
Both. So it depends on how the artist feels about that. So our cafelina.tv platform that we have now has a catalog of past shows that we've divided up by genre. You know, we have a jazz series and a folk series, etc. And then there's also the nightly live stream. So people can pay $5 to watch any show that's in the archive or that's streaming live. And then with a subscription for $15 a month, they can have access to the entire archive, which we rotate some of that content monthly. So constantly refreshing.
So did you hire a programmer to make this TV site? Is that?
Yeah, Reese.
Well, all right. So it's not. So the platform is powered by a company called Uscreen, which is their whole focus is video monetization. Performing arts is a relatively small portion of their user base. You'll see a lot of, if you go to their site, you'll see a lot of yoga studios and other more instructional things that, you know, they sell batches of classes and stuff like that. But they supply the whole framework for it. And we populated it with our own image, with our own content, with our own backend controls, stuff like that. But the framework was already there. So it didn't require any web development expertise.
Right. No coding necessary.
No coding necessary. Although if you have someone on staff with that knowledge, there is the option to supplement with your own work.
I'm sure. That's awesome. All right. We have 10 minutes left, and I'm trying to kind of condense some questions that are similar. I don't even know how to ask this question because I don't know about it. But black magic has been asked about a couple times in kind of a vague form. So do you know about black magic, and do you use it or not, and why?
Well, the Atom Mini Pro, that's the company that makes those. So, and actually, while we're doing some of the, if we get in more of the technical stuff, I thought maybe this would be valuable for people that have questions. I took a bunch of pictures, and I can quickly just run through some pictures so people could just get a visual idea of some of the things we've been talking about. Is that fair? I mean, I'd like to take a minute to just share the screen here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that'd be really helpful.
Okay, let me do my technology thing here. Just hold on. Okay, blah, blah, blah. I practiced this. Sure, I did. Okay. And I guess that's coming up. That's a picture of the remote control camera we're talking about. That people see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's a PTZ optics camera. That's the expensive camera. We could talk about options, all that stuff, but that's the thing that we could control, probably very similar to what you have. The other cameras are just little tripod cameras. I mentioned crowd mics, making sure that in the stream people can hear the applause and that's what we have up there. The camera, that's what the remote control looks like. I'm just sitting at the back with a Mac controlling that. This is the Blackmagic. This is the Atom Mini Pro screen on the computer. Controls for which cameras you're using and some still graphics and audio. That's what the screen actually looks like. Let's see. That's the desk. Okay, here we go. So this is the Blackmagic Atom Mini Pro in our setup. It's set up at this point with 4 cameras and sound and everything else. This is what controls everything. I heard the price went down to $500 on this thing, so it's a pretty amazing box for what it does. Let's see. So on the screen during a show, what you see, we just had a show, Folk Stage this weekend. I have on the upper left there is the preview of which camera would be next. On the right is the actual stream that's going out. So that was performer. It shows volume levels on the left. On the bottom next row, you'll see that there's 3 cameras left to right. The one in the red border is the one you're sending out right now. The green is the next, and the third is the third camera. And I'm basically just sitting there hitting a button to switch. So during the show, this is what's going on. I switch back and forth, and but the only thing that's a little freaky is being the guy who does this. I hit a button, switch cameras. I'm also monitoring the YouTube at the same time, and because of the way we have it set up, this is intentional. There's a roughly 30-second delay in what goes out on the stream. So your brain takes some adjusting to realize part of you is looking at live and part of you is looking at what happened 30 seconds ago. But that's what I'm watching on the computer. That lets me see what's going on, see the comments that people have posted on YouTube, perhaps. Lets me see the delay. Let's see how many people are watching at that point, that kind of thing. So, okay, I think that that's a very quick idea of what some of the technology looks like. So let me stop my screen sharing.
That's helpful for me. I always like seeing visuals. It does look a little intimidating to me, who is not tech savvy. However, I mean, if I took a little time, I could probably figure it out. I'm wondering, so you, Randy, broadcast to YouTube and you broadcast to Facebook Live?
No Facebook Live. We do absolutely nothing for Facebook.
Just YouTube?
Yeah, Facebook is, to me, the plague that, yeah, no. I don't like the fact that Facebook really doesn't let you control your content. They love controlling your content. We broadcast to YouTube, but only over a private link. So if you go search for the concert, you will not find any of our YouTubes out there. It's a link that we send out as part of your ticket, and that's the only way you can get at it.
Okay. And then Sarah and Reese, you don't stream to social medias, do you?
Yeah, we do. We do the first 2 songs of a ticketed concert. We do the first 2 songs to YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And then we shut off the social media part of it. But there are other kinds of things that we do that are not our headline concerts, that are more like, say, the featured poet at Poetry Open Mic, or a conversation among nonprofit leaders that we're streaming, this type of thing. We'll do that on our YouTube and leave that kind of content up.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's really cool. We have about 3 minutes left. So, and I know you all have another meeting to be at, and I'm so grateful for your time. The whole farm community is, the whole Folk Alliance community is. I'd like to bring, if possible, Annie on the screen and Charlie on the screen. It's not possible, or Annie's just like, no, I'm not going to be on the screen. I saw her shake her head. And there we go. Annie has brought a ton of leadership. She is a conference director. And then Charlie's taking over for virtual connections direction and leading those meetings, because we are hopefully having an in-person conference this year.
We better.
I can't find Charlie.
That's the
Where
plan.
is Charlie? Oh, there you are. Where are you?
Maybe
I'm here.
I can't. Is your camera on?
I believe it's on.
How come I can't see your face? Are you?
I got a haircut. Here, let me put the hat on. See if that makes a difference.
There you are.
There you go.
Yay, Charlie.
I just wanted to make sure to bring you on the screen, and thank all of you for being a part of this today. There are still so many unanswered questions in the chat, which is wonderful to see, which makes me think maybe we should have a tech talk and just a gathering of ideas session, because we could go into so many things. We could go deep into black magic. That sounds fun. my witchy brain.
I had my hand up. I don't know why. I just posted my comment in the chat.
Oh,
For
excellent.
the record. Yeah.
And we could go into a lot of these. Somebody asked about streaming to Instagram. What the heck? How can we do that? And because that's kind of another beast altogether. So we have so many topics to cover, but you all shed some great light on what you're doing and what is possible. And I really appreciate you. We really appreciate you. Annie just put a bunch of links in the chat. All these tech sessions are free. If you feel like you can make a donation to Farm, that'd be lovely. There's a PayPal link somewhere, I'm sure of it, on our website. And please check out Acoustic Renaissance and Cafe Lena. And anything else left to say, y'all?
I would just say thank you so much. I've come to a bunch of your sessions and they've been wonderful, and our community is stronger because of it. If you guys, anybody who's listening, wants to reach out to the Cafe Lena folks personally, it's just Sarah@cafelena.org or Reese@cafelena.org. You can easily reach us or just pick up the phone and call us. Check out cafelena.tv and see what we're doing. See if you like it, and we're happy to be of support in any way possible.
And I'll say the same thing. It's been great. And contact info is just Randy at Acoustic Ren. We know a lot of people can't spell Renaissance, so it's acousticren.com and that's also the concert series website. If anybody wants to check out what we have there, acousticren.com, or just Randy at acousticren.com. So it's been great.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you everybody who chimed in on the socials and everybody who was in the Zoom room. We appreciate you all. Thanks. Big round of applause, as it were.